Thanks, Brian. It's good to be here. How's everybody doing this morning? It's good to see all the cultures and the different folks here and just worshiping God. We're all one in Jesus Christ. Amen. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. I'm an excitable person, so excuse me if I come across as overly excited. It's just the type of person I am. A few weeks ago, my wife and I had the honor and the privilege to fly off to Brazil and do some training for young leaders. Missionaries are working in the slums in Brazil, and we had the amazing time to be able to live in a slum for 10 days in Brazil. It was just a tremendous time. One of the things I was so excited about, and you're going to think I'm weird, but we were flying over Brazil to get to this place where we were going, and I really wanted to see the Amazon River. It's the biggest river in the world. And the reason why I wanted to see this river is because there's a guy by the name of James Fowler. I don't know if you've ever read his work. He's a prolific writer and thinker on the area of faith development. And James Fowler describes movements of God in this way. So if you ever want to figure out what a movement of God, when God is going to do something big, when God is going to create a movement, what does it look like? Fowler compares it to the Amazon River. And what he says is, he says, a movement of God is like the mighty Amazon River, this big, beautiful, mighty Amazon River. And then he says this, he says, if you were to fly above the Amazon River, which we were doing, I'm trying to look out the window, but it was dark, so that's not going to help me any. But he says, if you fly over the Amazon River, you will find out what makes the Amazon River so great and so powerful. And what makes the Amazon River so great and so powerful are the little rivers, the little tributaries that feed into the Amazon River. And all throughout this beautiful, big, powerful Amazon River, there's these little rivers feeding into it. And what Fowler says is this, that a movement of God is when a bunch of little rivers get together and they become the mighty Amazon River. A movement of God, and Barbara shared about this morning, is when a bunch of the rivers, God calls these rivers to connect together and to become a mighty river of God. Right now in LTURN and now Connect City, we've seen the opportunity where we believe God is creating a movement of God in the inner city in Toronto. And hopefully it can spread. We'll leave that up to God. But I've been blessed to have some rivers come together and join this movement, and we're seeing more and more rivers, more and more traction of people who are really interested in what we're doing in forming this movement of God. So I've brought 3 tributaries. I brought 3 rivers with me here this morning, so you can meet them, and they're going to share a little bit about this movement that they're involved in the city of Toronto. So why don't you guys come up? I know these mics are available. The wonderful sound people in the back told me they'd be available, so stand up. I was hoping to have chairs and have a little panel, but we'll do it this way. First of all, we've got Jordan Thoms here. He's pastoring a church called the Warden Underground in Warden Woods. And this is Jordan. We have Judith McCartney. That's my beautiful wife. And she praises God every morning when she wakes up to be married to a guy like me. She's speechless right now. And then we have John at the end here, and John's been with us for a year, and by this time next year, we hope he'll be planting his first church. So he's in training right now. So these are 3 of the rivers. We have more rivers we couldn't bring with us. So I'm going to start off with Jordan. And Jordan, I'm going to ask you a simple question. You've started this church called the Warden Underground. Brian has been a great help for both of you guys because you're church planters. But why does Warden Woods need the Warden Underground Church? What's God's movement there in Warden Underground? Why is it needed there?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Okay, there we go, good. So I'll put it like this. The Warden Woods community, some of you guys may be familiar with it. There was an MCEC church there years ago, and then eventually ended up closing down. But back when I was a teenager, about 12, 13, there was a Christian organization there called Urban Promise.
Now, just so you know, Jordan grew up in Warden Woods,
which Colin and Judith started. And what happened was a lot of my peers and the people that I grew up with and that were part of my crew would end up having experiences and encounters with God. And it would last for like 3 months, sometimes a whole summer. And we would be on fire for God, and we'd be reading the Bible, and we would really experience God. It was something that we never felt or encountered before. But then something started to change. And a lot of us ended up getting caught up in gang activity and criminal history and being in and out of jail. And even a lot of my friends became addicts. And I was wondering, man, like, what happened? How come I'm the only one to be able to make it out of it? And it was because I had people like Colin and Judith in my life who were there, despite the stuff that I was going through, to disciple me and help grow me spiritually and develop me. And the rest of my peers didn't have that, even though they were there. It was just something, there was a disconnect there. And so when I ended up giving my life to the Lord, I felt part of my call was to plant a church so that it was something that they could be a part of. Because the reason why we were doing these things is because there was no church in Warden to help us harvest and foster and grow our spiritual development. It wasn't there, and that's something that Urban Promise lacked. It was a community where we can get together and grow. And so I thought, man, once I gave my life to the Lord, there needs to be a church there, because maybe my peers and my friends wouldn't have stayed down that path and would have came back or not even went into it if there was something that they could have went out to consistently. So part of my call was to have a church in Warden so that I could limit those negative outlets and outcomes that happen.
So it's pretty exciting to see that we have an indigenous young man who grew up in the hood, who's now a pastor, a street pastor in many ways in the neighborhood. And who better to plant a church in Warden Woods than a guy that's grown up in Warden Woods? And I would rather have Jordan, who's grown up there, than some white guy from seminary who doesn't know the neighborhood. Brian, the very white guy over here, he's very white hair. He's got the he's got I know God hairstyle right there with that white hair. He's been a tremendous help. And we need to thank MCEC, right? Because if it wasn't for MCEC, Jordan wouldn't have that support and those resources to be able to reach his people. And so we are so thankful for MCEC and for Brian and for Henry as well, who've been with us all the way. So, Jordan, that's an amazing story that you've started a church now and you've got, 20, 25, maybe more people that attend regularly, but you're also reaching more and more people in the neighborhood through all sorts of stuff. Judith, you've started a church called Soul House.
Yeah.
Tell us why that's important. What's with Soul House?
Soul House is important because we each have a story. If each of us dig really deep down into our souls, you can remember certain stories that have wounded you, some stories that identify celebration. I grew up I was an immigrant from Holland. We came over with 8 kids. We have a blended family, so half of our family is very Asian looking. And here we are in the early 1970s. We come to Canada and we plant ourselves in a very white community. So you can almost understand a family that doesn't really know English very well. We look very different than everybody else. We craved community, and we really needed that community years later, a handful of years later when my mother died. So here's my father with 8 kids. We're an immigrant family. We're just getting adjusted to the culture, and we want to belong somewhere. And that's actually part of my story. I can't really continue on with my full journey, but I believe that our church planting initiatives are for people to feel community, feel like they belong. And not very many people have enough courage to go to a local conventional church. So we're a unique expression of that. And the folks that come to my church, we have up to 25 people. Not everybody comes at the same time, but we have about 25 people in our congregation, and we meet them where they are. Currently, in our congregation, we have about 4 people that have cancer. One person just died yesterday. So that's very close to my heart. And just recently, one of my congregants told me that she has lung cancer. I also have an addict in my church. Yet, we really function like a very healthy family. So my passion really for church is that we become a healthy community, reflecting God's love. And so my passion primarily is healthy leadership and healthy organization. And that would be one of the things that I spend most of my time in doing, is to create that landscape for our leaders at Connect Ministry, and also for our organization to be healthy so that we can see more church plants that have unique expressions of church. And we need to do that more now because we're a post-Christian society. And how are we going to reach people? I really feel convicted that we need to be the Jesus walking into our communities and being that community for them. So I hope and pray that in the years to come, we can see many, many, many more church plants in the Toronto community that reflect unique expressions of church.
Part of our DNA as we started this is that we want every church to always think of apprenticing somebody who they can then send out to plant a church, and that person has it in their DNA, that we just continue to become like a beautiful virus where the Spirit just sneezes into the city of Toronto, these church planters that can minister in unique ways and special ways. And part of the virus is right there. You're a virus, John. Isn't that great to know? We've been able to sneeze John a little bit. John's been with us for a year. He's going to be with us for another year in part of the process of training and apprenticing to be a church planter. The great thing is with John is it's taken us about a year just to get to know each other, and we've done lots of trips, and it's been really good. I've been so blessed to have this guy, and I know the rest of these guys feel so blessed. So John, tell us a little bit about what you've experienced as an apprentice, and what do you see happening in a year from now?
Okay, so I've known Colin and Judith for a few years through their son. I would play hockey a lot with them and then stay over at his house, and that's how I kind of got to know Colin and Judith. And about last summer is when we started talking about Connect Ministries and what I could possibly be doing with them. So they offered that I could be an intern with them for the following year, which is now currently this one. And they said my role would be that I get to go through all the churches that they have and kind of figure out what I like, dislike, and learn a lot. And then the next year kind of plant my own church based on what I've learned through those churches. So my schedule can sometimes be pretty busy because I'm on 3 different churches. One church I would call an old school brick and mortar youth group. And then another one is the Soul House, where we meet at their house. And then Jordan's church as well, where we meet in a community center. And I've learned lots, pulling from each thing and kind of figuring out what I want to do next year. So hopefully this time next year when we have this gathering that I can come up and report about my first church that we planted. So that's our hope and prayer for this time next year.
That's good. So, So we just keep asking for prayer, and we thank, again, we're so thankful for the people resources you've given us, the financial resources, but pray that more streams, more rivers will join together with us, and we'll just see what the Lord does through our open hearts to His leading. So thank you, guys. You were great, and thank you, everybody.